Hi, in this video we will be talking about inventory decisions when the cost of the unit cost is of interest, is changing. This is probably in a case where we have quantity discounts, where the price changes based on how much we buy. If the cost is not a factor, we don't have to think about it. But when the cost does change, then we have to explicitly think about it. So we will calculate costs using these three parts. We have first the holding cost, which is Q divided by 2, like it was with the EOQ. But then the holding cost per unit per year is not a fixed dollar amount like $1.50, but it is the cost of the item C multiplied by some interest rate I. So that's how we get the holding cost here. And then the annual ordering cost is the same. It's the annual demand divided by Q times the ordering or setup cost C. And then lastly, we have the cost of the goods, the cost of the stuff we're buying. And if the annual demand is D, we have annual demand D times the cost per unit C. So that's how we will calculate the costs. Before we can calculate the costs, we need to decide what order quantity we want to use, and I have a whole separate video talking about making inventory purchasing decisions when we have quantity discounts. But just to give you a quick summary, we make a modification to the economic order quantity, so it's 2DS divided by, and instead of being a fixed holding amount, $1.50, it's this same holding cost factor of the cost per unit C times the interest rate I. So using the numbers we've got here, we'll have 2 times annual demand of 10,000 times the cost of placing an order or producing it ourselves of $80. And then we divide that by the cost per unit, which is $10, times the holding cost, which is 25%. And then we take the square root of that whole thing, and that should end up with an order size of 800. Now, in order for us to be able to use this order size of 800, the price schedule that our supplier gives us, this has to work out so that if we buy 800 units, we get the price of $10. If 800 wouldn't be enough to get that price, then we'd have to raise our order size to 1,000 or 2,000 or whatever the supplier requires in order for us to get the price of $10. But let's say at the price of $10, we're buying 800 units, and we need to compute the cost of that purchase decision, the holding, the ordering, and the cost of the goods. So we will start with the holding cost. So our order quantity 800 divided by 2 times the cost of the goods, which is $10, times the holding cost, which is 25%. I'm just going to stop and do this calculation one step at a time. So 800 divided by 2 is 400, times 10 is 4,000, times 25% is $1,000, right? This is why you do your homework ahead of time. Yes, okay, perfect. So that's the holding cost. Then the ordering cost is annual demand of 10,000 units divided by our order size of 800, and then multiplied by our setup cost or ordering cost of 80. And look at this, so we have 80 divided by 8,000 times 10,000, and so we end up with $1,000 for that as well, which, if you know about the EOQ, ordering and holding costs should be balanced, so we expected those numbers to be the same because we are using the EOQ. And then lastly, we have 10,000 units at a price of $10, which is obviously 100,000 units. So that gives us a total cost of $102,000. So, beautiful. So there you have it. When the holding cost is a percentage of the value of the item, which is a very common way to think about inventory, this changes our EOQ. The holding cost is now the unit cost times the interest rate. And then we have that same cost structure here in our holding cost calculation, which is Q over 2 times C times I. And then the other difference here is that we are factoring in the cost of the goods sold by taking the annual demand times the cost per unit. And we got a total cost of $102,000. I hope this has been helpful.